and welcome to another episode of the Promoter Podcast. I'm your host, Felicity Furey, and it is an absolute pleasure to welcome Rob Hoffman on the show today. He is a Senior Manager in Infrastructure Advisory at BDO and has a number of other roles which we will get into today on the podcast. Rob, how are you? Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Felicity. No, doing well. Sunny day in Brisbane. So, looking forward to what hopefully will be a short day ahead, but who knows?
Amazing. And Rob, you're someone who is a real standout for me. If I think of people who are fantastic networkers, and we know that networking is such a huge part of being promoted and progression in your career, you are like my number one go-to person. I love rocking up to random events in Brisbane and going, of course Rob would be here. You've been the chair of young engineers nationally, which is hugely impressive. And you're currently on the board of the Infrastructure Association of Queensland. How did you get there? How did you get into these impressive roles so early in your career?
Well, it could lead to me trying to say no more. So maybe I should be saying no more. But I think a lot of it is chance and luck, but it's also, as you sort of mentioned, I think I do try to contribute as much as I can. So trying to get involved as much as I can. Because I think one thing that's really frustrated me over time is when you say you're having that water cooler chat or whatever it may be with someone, and the first thing they'll say in that sort of situation is, why is this happening? Or why can't this be done better? Or what's the issue with this? And when I hear people like that, I'm always like, well, why don't you do something about it? And I think that's what sort of led me to these different committees and groups. It's sort of, I want to change a lot of things and sort of actually make an impact on things, which one thing leads to another. And before you know it, you're chairing a group, whether it's statewide or national. But it's been a good journey along the way.
That's cool. So it sounds like you've been really driven by wanting to take action rather than just talking about things. And that can be a really powerful way, joining a committee and volunteering to actually do that. What has your experience been? Because I know sometimes when you're on large groups of people, or it's a committee or it's volunteers, it's a bit of a different context in leadership. And I think actually in some ways it could be more challenging leading a group of volunteers than leading a group at work. What's been your experience around, I say, even like motivating people and getting people to do stuff and getting others to take action?
It's a really good question. I think I think you would go insane if you didn't actually often reflect and say, look, these people are volunteering their time. They can't be expected to do what you would typically do in say a paid work role. But I think the thing is finding people who are passionate or have the same amount of passion as you do. So I think about some of the most successful groups I've been part of, or some of the most successful initiatives that we've rolled out. And it's only one or two people that can really make a difference. If you can find that one person that you can bounce ideas off, or that one person or two people that you can sort of challenge each other along the way, I think that's all you need. I think often we think that you need a team of 10 plus to make a difference, but it's really only a couple of people who have that sort of crazy level of motivation that can really make real change.
That's such a good tip. I wish I had that advice earlier, because I know for me, I would just try to want to get everyone on board when I should have taken that approach. It's very efficient. The engineer in me is loving that, because you're more effective with your time, and that is so good. And you just only need a couple. And that's such a great way to, I think, be effective and save time in terms of making stuff happen. This is going to be maybe sound sinister. I don't know if that's the right word, but is there a way that you kind of assess that in people? Do you do it? Sometimes I do this, which maybe I should be saying publicly, is do little experiments. Like you'll go, I'll get them to take that action and see if they do it. Or like, how long is it going to take them to actually follow up on that? Do you have that kind of as part of your process to assess it? Or are you a bit more organic? Like, we'll just throw some at the wall and see what sticks?
It's definitely, I would say I'm definitely more organic in that sense. I think every time you get involved in something, there'll be someone, say you have a committee meeting or whatever it may be, there will always be one or two people that following this session will shoot you a text or shoot you a note on LinkedIn and sort of say, look, that really resonated with me, or I was annoyed about that, or why can't we do this instead? And the moment you see someone do that, that should be the moment to jump in, because they're the ones who are passionate and actually want to do something different. If they've gone out of their way to pick up their phone on the coffee on the way to work, then they clearly care about what actually happened in that meeting. So that's the way I try to do it. doesn't always work because as you might not even get a message, but most of the times you will, because at the end of the day, if people are willing, particularly to meet in some of these groups, which they happen after hours, so they might be at 7 a.m. in the morning or 6 p.m. at night. The fact that they're there to start with means you're likely sort of honing in on a group of really passionate people who really care about the industry they're in or the group of people they represent. If they then go that one step further and message you about it or communicate with you about it outside of that session, then they're going to be a star. So yeah, that's how I try to do it, but should caveat with it doesn't always work, but most of the time it does.
I'm definitely stealing that. And I keep going in this networking path because I think it's really powerful. And one thing I find challenging about networking, or you could even say that maintaining a network might not be the right word to describe it, but sometimes I think, oh, there's a few people I'd really like to catch up with. I've tried things. I've had like spreadsheets. At the moment, I've got a note on my phone, which has got location basis. So I'm going to go to Sydney. Okay, I'm going to check my Sydney list. Who do I want to catch up with? It's something that I try and actively do is maintaining that network because I've just seen so many powerful results. So first question there is, how do you maintain it, or do you have some kind of way to keep those connections going? It sounds like maybe even the boards, it's just a good way to have a project to work on together and give you an excuse to catch up with people. Would that be right?
Yeah, I think I wish there was a tool that could actually enable you to do that. I don't think it currently exists. So I would love to create it because I think it's a great idea. I think at the end of the day, I look, there is limited time in the week. There's particularly when you travel for work, you might be going for a really sort of compressed amount of meetings. So there's really limited time around it. So I think and I'm starting to realize this more as I get older, but I think you can't make time for everyone and you can't always catch up with everyone. So it's literally impossible to keep everyone sort of really catching up with them in person or whatever it may be. But I think the power of messaging is really good. So just dropping people a quick note is really effective, just so they remember who you are, you remember who they are, just checking in how they're doing. The other thing is, I think just be honest when you don't have time to catch up. I think previously I definitely fell into the trap of, if I don't have time to catch up with them or if there's too much going on in my life, I would make up some excuse as to why I couldn't see that individual. But I think if you're completely honest about why you can't, so it might be, I have significant things happening with my family at the moment, for example, that be honest, give that reason, and chances are that person might be going through the exact same thing at the same time, which means you form a deeper connection with them anyway. And they completely understand then why you may not be available to meet with them. So I think it's just, you sort of have to realize that there is limited time, sadly. If you can meet with people in groups, so boards, committees are a really good way to do that. That sort of kills 3 to 4 birds with one stone, or just sending people a simple message as well is really effective.
I was hoping you'd have some kind of like magic wash. Okay,
Sadly not.
That's fair enough. And I think I love what you said around that telling people what's really going on. Absolutely agree. It builds that rapport and also respect, because it means that you are respecting your priorities. And I often feel like, oh no, I feel bad cancelling or, et cetera. And often now that I've got a young family, feel like I need to shuffle things more, like the random sickness that happens. And I go, oh my gosh, this is so frustrating, but there's literally nothing I can do about it. And you just have to be okay with it and have some compassion. It's definitely shown me compassion for other people. If there is someone out there who's listening to this and they're going, oh, I want to be on a board, or I want to be doing the things that Rob is doing, have you got any advice for how to even get started? Because, but for me, I don't know how to get on the National Engineers Committee. That's extraordinary. What would be kind of your first tips for people starting it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think if I look back at all the opportunities I've had, they've all started with a problem that needed to be solved. So whether it was starting all the way back, say 10 plus years ago in the Young Engineers Queensland Committee, the reason I got involved in that was I wanted to attend more events focused at young engineers in Queensland. And there wasn't an active group, but they could definitely do more in terms of building the reach of that from an event point of view. So that was a problem. I joined that group, and then we tried to solve it through offering more events. The same thing happened with, I'm part of an awesome not-for-profit called Baby Give Back, which is essentially a charity based in Gold Coast, but also Brisbane, which our core purpose is to ensure every child has an equal start to life. So we do that by providing products to kids who may be in need, sort of at that really young age, just to make sure that they have everything they need. That example, I flagged that example because I attended an International Women's Day breakfast. I think it was about a year and a half, 2 years ago now. And essentially the CEO spoke at that and talked about the problem she was trying to solve, which was they had some issues in terms of their current warehouse infrastructure in Brisbane. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is a problem I can solve because I'm in the infrastructure industry. I want to really give back, do something, as my little niece had just been born at the same time. And I was like, my God, imagine if she didn't have everything she needed. So one thing that led to another, and I was like, can I assist with this? We did a pro bono project for her and that organization. And then following that, they asked me to join the board as sort of the infrastructure person on that board. So yeah, if I look back, it's all been just, I've been passionate about some problem that needed to be solved. One thing led to another. And before I knew it, I was, sitting as part on a committee or a board or whatever it may be.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that perspective because I think often when I was sort of aspiring to leadership early on, I thought it was, oh, how do I be a leader? But then I kind of, similar to your story, ended up with, oh, I want to go get more women into engineering. I want to go solve that problem around diversity. They went, oh, okay. Then a few years later, I've got this organization and now I can say a leader. And it wasn't because I went to go, I'm going to go be a leader. So I think focusing on the right things, like the problem you're solving or the why or the purpose, is really powerful. And I think gives you that drive and motivation, particularly if it's an outside work activity and you've got to prioritize that around everything else.
Yeah, definitely.
My last question for you is, what do you wish you knew before getting into some of these positions, being on boards? In the space that you're in now, have you got any advice for your younger self?
Can say no. So you definitely can say no at times. I think particularly when you're at that stage where you're trying to impress people or whatever it may be, trying to make an impact, and it is okay to say no. And I think that's something that once you can do that, it's really empowering because then you start to prioritize your time in what really matters as well. Apart from that, I have thought about that question a lot because I feel like it's a common question that gets asked. And I look back and I don't think there is anything I wish I knew at the time. I think every experience that I've had along the way has brought up things that have sort of shocked me or have been a sort of an unknown that I wasn't expecting. I think that's the exciting part as well. So if there are elements that you wish you knew before you did whatever it may be, then it may not be the best opportunity because you should be learning new things along the way as well. So yeah, there really isn't anything apart from, you can say no sometimes and not completely burn yourself out, to be fair.
That's so good because I often think if I knew how hard it was to start a business or to do a charity or run a not-for-profit or all those things, I probably wouldn't have started. So I think I would agree with you there. Sometimes it's better not to know. And even when people come to me, I'll get asked a lot for advice around starting programs to work with school students and work in schools. And it can be really challenging. And I actually say to people, avoid it unless you want to, dedicate it. I mean, I think it is very important we speak to school students, but there are other strategies than the traditional approach that I think can make an impact. And I think sometimes it's better not to know.
Otherwise you get scared and you don't end up doing it right. So it's a great point.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rob. It's been fantastic to speak with you today. I know I'm constantly inspired by what you're up to, and I'm sure our listeners will be too. Thank you for being here on the Promoted Podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.